Jack Miller was a man in his mid-30s who lived a simple life. He worked as a janitor at a large interstellar transit hub, a place where ships from many worlds came and went. His life was not filled with grand adventures or riches, but it was steady. He had one reason to keep going each day, and that reason was his young son, Ethan. Jack had lost his wife years earlier, and since then, every moment of his life was dedicated to raising Ethan as best as he could. They lived in a modest apartment not far from the hub. Jack did not have much money, but he gave Ethan love, attention, and kindness. To Jack, that was more important than anything else. Every morning, Jack woke up early, prepared breakfast for Ethan, and walked him to school before heading to work. His job as a janitor was not glamorous. Most people did not even notice him as he cleaned the endless hallways, polished floors, and picked up after busy travelers. He wore a faded uniform and carried a simple lunch packed in an old container. Yet Jack never complained. He had accepted his life, and he found small moments of peace in his routine. For him, the greatest reward was seeing Ethan smile when he returned home at the end of a long day. One afternoon, during his short break, Jack found a quiet corner in the massive terminal where he could sit and eat. He opened his lunch, which was only a simple sandwich and a small bottle of water. He had gotten used to plain meals. His priority was always making sure Ethan had enough to eat. As Jack took his first bite, something caught his attention. He heard a soft sound, almost like crying. At first, he thought it might be a lost child, so he set his sandwich down and looked around. Not far away, in the shadow of a large metal pillar, he saw a figure curled up. The figure was small, almost childlike, but there was something strange about it. Jack walked closer and his eyes widened. Sitting on the cold floor was a girl unlike any he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered faintly as though tiny scales covered her arms and small wings folded behind her back. Her golden eyes were filled with tears that rolled down her cheeks. She looked no older than Ethan, maybe 10 or 11, but she was clearly not human. She was a dragon girl. Jack stopped for a moment, unsure what to do. He had seen aliens pass through the terminal before, but never one like this. She looked lost, scared, and completely alone. Other travelers walked past without even glancing at her. Jack's heart softened. To him, it did not matter what she looked like. She was a child in pain, and that was enough. Slowly, he knelt down so that he would not frighten her. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice calm and gentle. "Are you all right?" The dragon girl did not answer. She wiped at her tears with the back of her hand, but kept her eyes lowered. Jack could see that her clothes, though elegant in design, were a little dirty, as if she had been wandering around for some time. He remembered the sandwich he had left behind. Without thinking twice, he pulled it out of his lunchbox and held it toward her. "It's not much," Jack said with a small smile, "but you look hungry. You can have this if you want." The girl's golden eyes lifted slightly. She hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. No one had stopped for her before. She stared at the sandwich in his hand. Jack waited patiently, not pushing her. Finally, with trembling fingers, she reached out and accepted it. She took a small bite, then another, and her tears slowed. For the first time since he had seen her, her face relaxed just a little. Jack felt relief wash over him. He sat down nearby, giving her space but showing that he was not going to leave her alone. "See, it's just food. You don't need to cry anymore," he said kindly. The girl looked at him, her lips moving as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Jack did not press her. Instead, he just stayed close, letting her finish the sandwich at her own pace. What Jack did not know was that they were not alone. High above the terminal, hidden by advanced technology, someone else was watching the scene unfold. The girl's mother, Serafina, the Dragon Queen, had followed her daughter in secret. Serafina was the ruler of a mighty alien kingdom, feared across many systems. She had brought her daughter, Lyra, to the human transit hub to test her, to see how she would handle herself among strangers. But when Lyra wandered away, Serafina decided to observe rather than intervene immediately. She had expected humans to ignore her child or treat her with suspicion. Instead, what she saw shocked her. A simple man dressed in a janitor's uniform had noticed her daughter's tears and offered her kindness. He did not ask who she was or what she was worth. He did not show fear or contempt. He simply gave her his meal, even though it was all he had. Serafina felt something stir in her chest. It was a feeling she had not allowed herself to feel in years, something close to gratitude. Down below, Jack continued to talk softly to Lyra, though she did not respond much. He asked her name, and after a long pause, she whispered, "Lyra." Her voice was quiet, almost broken, but Jack smiled warmly. "That's a beautiful name," he said. "My son's name is Ethan. He'd like you." Lyra blinked at him, surprised by his gentle tone. She had grown up surrounded by attendants who obeyed her every command, but none had ever spoken to her like this. None had shown her such simple kindness. She felt something new, a strange warmth in her chest that she could not explain. Jack leaned back against the pillar, letting out a sigh. He had no idea who Lyra truly was. To him, she was just a lost child who needed help. "Don't worry," he said softly. "You're not alone anymore." Lyra finished the sandwich and hugged her knees, watching Jack with cautious eyes. For the first time that day, she did not feel invisible. She did not feel abandoned. She felt seen. And above, in the hidden shadows, the Dragon Queen's golden eyes filled with unshed tears as she continued to watch the human man comfort her daughter. Serafina, the Dragon Queen, remained hidden high above the terminal as she watched her daughter with careful eyes. She had not expected this turn of events. Her plan was to test Lyra's strength and her ability to stand on her own, but instead, her child had been found crying, weak and frightened. What surprised her even more was not Lyra's fear, but the human man who had noticed her pain. The man had nothing of value, nothing powerful about him, yet he had given away his own food to comfort a stranger. Serafina had lived for centuries, ruling her kingdom with wisdom and power, but in that moment she felt something unfamiliar. Her heart softened. She continued to observe, curious to know what this simple human would do next. Jack Miller, meanwhile, stayed seated beside Lyra, his eyes calm and steady. He did not leave her side even though his break was almost over. He knew he could get in trouble if his supervisor saw him away from his duties, but something inside him told him this mattered more. A child's tears were more important than polished floors or spotless windows. Jack had always been that way, choosing people over rules, kindness over coldness. His son Ethan was the reason he understood so well. He knew what it felt like to be small and scared in a world that didn't always care. Lyra looked at him with her golden eyes. She had finished the sandwich, but she still held the empty wrapper in her hand as if it were something precious. Jack noticed her fingers trembling and reached into his bag. He pulled out the small water bottle he had saved for himself. "Here," he said softly. "You should drink some water." Lyra hesitated again. Her whole life she had been taught not to trust outsiders, not to lower her guard. But there was no harshness in Jack's voice. There was no demand. She slowly took the bottle and sipped. For the first time, she felt her chest loosen. The tightness of fear began to fade. She looked at Jack, and her lips curved into the smallest smile. Jack's heart lifted. He smiled back as if he had just seen the sun rise. Up above, Serafina noticed that smile. It was faint, but it was there. Lyra had not smiled that way in a long time. The queen remembered how her daughter had grown lonely in the great palace, surrounded by servants but with no true friends. Here, in a human transit hub, a janitor had done what her whole court had failed to do: make her child smile. Serafina's attendants shifted uneasily, whispering that the human was too close, that he should be removed. But Serafina silenced them with a wave of her hand. She wanted to see more. Jack decided to keep the conversation gentle. "So, Lyra," he said in a warm tone, "where are your parents? Are they nearby?" Lyra lowered her eyes and did not answer. Jack could tell the question made her nervous, so he did not press her. Instead, he tried a different approach. "You know, I have a son. His name is Ethan. He's about your age. He would probably ask you 100 questions right now." Lyra tilted her head slightly, curious. Jack chuckled softly. "He's a curious kid, always asking me why the stars look the way they do, or why the trains are always late." He shook his head with a smile. "I don't have all the answers, but I try." Hearing him speak so gently about his child made Lyra's heart ache in a way she did not understand. Her own mother loved her deeply, but Serafina was a queen before anything else. She was often busy with councils, wars, and diplomacy. Lyra sometimes felt as if she lived in a golden cage. Listening to Jack talk about Ethan made her wonder what it would be like to have such a simple, warm bond. As if on cue, Ethan appeared. He had finished his school day and had come looking for his dad at the hub, as he often did when Jack worked late. "Dad," Ethan called, running up with a grin. Jack turned, his face lighting up. "Ethan, there you are." He hugged his son, then introduced him to Lyra. "This is Lyra. She was having a rough day, so we're keeping her company." Ethan looked at Lyra with bright, curious eyes. He didn't seem afraid of her wings or her shimmering skin. Instead, he held out the juice box from his backpack. "Here," he said cheerfully. "You can have this." Lyra blinked in surprise, staring at the small box with a straw. She took it slowly, as if it were a rare treasure. She tasted the sweet liquid and her eyes widened. She had never had anything like it before. Ethan laughed. "You like it, huh?" For the first time, Lyra giggled. The sound was soft, uncertain, but real. Jack felt something warm spread through his chest as he watched his son and Lyra sitting together. It was such a simple moment, but it carried a beauty he could not put into words. Serafina felt her throat tighten as she watched. Her daughter's laughter echoed in her mind. It had been so long since she had heard that sound. She remembered when Lyra had been very small, chasing after golden butterflies in the royal gardens. Time and duty had weighed on both of them since then. But now, because of this human and his child, Lyra was laughing again. Jack leaned back, letting the two children talk in their own way. Ethan asked Lyra questions about her wings, about where she came from, and Lyra answered only with shy nods and gestures. She did not reveal her true identity, but she felt safe with Ethan. Jack simply watched them, content. Meanwhile, Serafina's advisors grew restless. "My queen," one whispered urgently. "This human does not know who he is speaking to. It is dangerous for him to be so close. We must intervene." Serafina shook her head. Her eyes stayed fixed on Jack. She saw no danger in him. Instead, she saw a man who had nothing yet gave everything he could. That was a kind of strength she had not seen in the grand halls of power. Time passed quickly. Jack realized he had to return to work soon. He sighed and looked at Lyra. "I have to get back, but don't worry. You're safe here. If you need anything, I'll help you." Lyra looked at him with wide eyes, not wanting him to leave. Ethan noticed and quickly said, "You can stay with us until you find your mom." "Right, Dad?" Jack smiled at his son's eagerness. "Of course," he said gently. "You're welcome to sit with us any time." Lyra's heart swelled with a feeling she could not name. She nodded slowly. For the first time since arriving at the hub, she did not feel lost. High above, Serafina's golden eyes glistened with unshed tears. She turned away from her attendants, who were still muttering about human insolence. She ignored them. Deep inside, she felt something shift. This human janitor, this man who should have been invisible to her, had done something no diplomat or warrior had ever managed. He had touched her heart through the way he treated her child. As Jack walked back to his cleaning duties, Ethan stayed with Lyra, showing her his small collection of drawings and toys he carried in his backpack. The sound of their laughter reached Jack's ears, and he smiled as he pushed his cleaning cart down the long corridor. He felt a quiet satisfaction, unaware of the storm of emotions his simple actions had awakened in a queen who watched from the shadows. That night, when Serafina and Lyra returned to their palace, the queen could not sleep. She stood on her balcony staring at the stars, replaying every moment in her mind. She wondered how one simple human could change so much in so little time. For the first time in centuries, Serafina found herself questioning the lessons she had taught her people about strength and power. Perhaps there was something far greater, something as simple as kindness. And so, though Jack Miller returned home that evening with nothing but tired arms and a nearly empty stomach, he had unknowingly planted the seed of change in the heart of a queen, a change that would shape the destiny of both their worlds. Jack Miller did not think of himself as someone special. He was just a man who worked hard to take care of his son. Yet the next day, as he returned to the terminal for his shift, he found himself wondering about the dragon girl he had met. Lyra had stayed in his mind all night. He had thought about her golden eyes, her trembling hands, and the small smile she gave when she tasted Ethan's juice box. Jack did not know why, but he hoped she was safe. He had no idea that high above, the Dragon Queen was thinking of him as well. That morning, Jack pushed his cleaning cart down the long halls of the transit hub. His son Ethan had insisted on coming with him again after school, eager to see if Lyra might appear. Ethan carried his backpack stuffed with small toys and crayons. He was excited, but Jack reminded him not to expect too much. "She might not come back," Jack said gently. Ethan only grinned and replied, "I think she will." Hours passed, and Jack focused on his duties. He mopped the shining floors, emptied bins, and polished glass windows while travelers hurried by without a glance. To them he was invisible, Yet Jack did not mind. He was used to being unseen. As long as Ethan was cared for, nothing else mattered. Still, every time he turned a corner, he found himself glancing around, half hoping to see Lyra again. In the hidden shadows above, Serafina was watching. She had brought Lyra back with her, curious to see if the human man would remember. Lyra was shy, clinging to her mother's side. "He will not be here," she whispered. But Serafina knew better. She could sense Jack's steady nature. He was the kind of man who kept his word without realizing how rare that was. The Queen gave her daughter a small nod, and Lyra stepped forward. Jack was cleaning near one of the side corridors when he heard Ethan shout, "Dad!" "She's here!" Jack turned and saw Lyra standing at the edge of the crowd. She looked hesitant, but her golden eyes lit up when Ethan ran over to her. Jack smiled and walked closer, making sure not to frighten her. "Hello again," he said softly. "It's good to see you." Lyra's wings fluttered slightly, a sign of her nervousness. But she did not run. Instead, she allowed Ethan to take her hand and pull her toward the bench where they had sat the day before. Jack followed, his heart lifting at the sight. He sat with them, and once again the three of them shared a quiet space in the busy terminal. Ethan pulled out his crayons and a scrap of paper. "Do you want to draw?" he asked Lyra. She hesitated, then nodded. Ethan handed her a blue crayon and she carefully began to trace shapes on the paper. Her claws made the lines a little uneven, but Ethan did not mind. He laughed and said, "That looks like a star." Lyra's lips curved into a small smile. Jack watched them with quiet pride. He had always taught Ethan to be kind, and now he saw that kindness in action. Serafina's eyes softened as she watched from above. She had worried that her daughter would never find someone who truly saw her for who she was, not for her title or her power. Yet here she was, sitting with a human boy and his father, laughing and drawing like an ordinary child. The Queen's heart ached, but in a good way. Jack noticed that Lyra seemed calmer today. He offered her a small packet of crackers he had packed for Ethan. She accepted them without hesitation this time. "You're getting braver," Jack said warmly. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes, unsure how to respond, but she felt safe. Ethan leaned close and whispered something silly that made her giggle again. Jack chuckled quietly, his heart swelling at the sound. As the afternoon stretched on, Jack realized something unusual. Some travelers were staring. They glanced at Lyra, then quickly looked away, whispering to each other. Jack felt protective. He moved slightly so that he blocked their view, shielding her without even thinking. Lyra noticed and felt her chest grow warm. No one had ever done that for her before. Up above, Serafina's attendants grew restless. "My queen," one murmured. "He shields her as if she were his own." "This is not proper. Shall we intervene?" But Serafina shook her head. Her eyes remained fixed on Jack. She wanted to see how far his instinctive kindness would go. Later, Ethan grew tired and leaned against Jack's side. Lyra looked at them, her golden eyes thoughtful. She whispered softly, "You take care of him." Jack turned to her, surprised she had spoken. He nodded. "Yes, he's my son. It's my job to take care of him." Lyra tilted her head. "Even when it's hard?" Jack smiled sadly. "Especially when it's hard." Those words sank deep into Lyra's heart. She thought of her mother, always strong and always busy, carrying the weight of a kingdom. She realized that strength did not only mean power. Sometimes it meant protecting someone simply because you loved them. She looked at Jack with new respect. Serafina felt tears burn in her eyes at her daughter's expression. She had taught Lyra to be strong, but she had not taught her that love could also be a form of strength. Now a simple human janitor was teaching her daughter what the court had never been able to. When it was time to leave, Jack gently told Lyra, "We'll be here again tomorrow if you want to join us." Lyra nodded slowly, her wings folding close. She did not want to say goodbye, but she knew she would come back. Ethan waved cheerfully. "See you tomorrow, Lyra," he called. As Jack and Ethan walked away, Serafina stood in the shadows with Lyra at her side. The Queen remained silent for a long moment. Finally, she whispered, "Do you want to see them again?" Lyra nodded quickly, her golden eyes shining. Serafina's heart softened further. She had planned to keep her daughter away from humans to shield her from weakness. But now she saw something she could not deny. Perhaps humanity had something her kingdom needed. That night, as Jack tucked Ethan into bed, He thought again of Lyra. He wondered where she came from, who her parents were, and why she seemed so lost. He did not know the answers, but he knew one thing for certain. He would be there for her, just as he was for Ethan. Kindness cost nothing, but it could change everything. And far away in her palace, Serafina looked out at the stars, her daughter asleep in her arms. She thought of the human man with the gentle eyes and the quiet strength. She thought of the way he had protected Lyra without knowing who she truly was. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon Queen found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about power. And in the quiet of the night, she allowed herself a single tear, unseen by anyone but the stars. The next day, the transit hub was busier than usual. People rushed through the wide halls, carrying bags, boarding ships, and speaking in many languages. Jack Miller pushed his cleaning cart slowly, his mind already half distracted. He wondered if Lyra would come again. Ethan had begged him that morning to bring extra snacks and crayons, just in case. Jack smiled at his son's excitement, though he warned him not to be disappointed if she did not appear. Still, deep inside, Jack hoped she would. Lyra did not disappoint. She arrived quietly, stepping out from the crowd, her golden eyes searching until they found Jack and Ethan. Ethan ran up to her with a wide grin, and Lyra's lips curved into a small but real smile. Jack's heart lifted at the sight. He welcomed her with a warm nod. "Glad you made it back," he said kindly. The three of them sat together again, away from the busiest parts of the hub. Ethan showed Lyra the drawings he had made the night before. One was of a starship, another of a dragon with large wings. Lyra giggled softly when she saw the dragon drawing. Ethan handed her a crayon, and soon they were both leaning over the paper, laughing at the shapes they made. Jack watched them with quiet joy. To him, this was peace, a simple moment in a world that often felt heavy. But the peace did not last long. Jack noticed a group of guards moving through the crowd. Their uniforms were different from the usual hub security. They carried themselves with sharper discipline, their eyes scanning the area carefully. Jack frowned. He had a strange feeling they were looking for someone. His heart sank when he realized their eyes were on Lyra. Lyra stiffened as she saw the guards. Her small hands trembled and her wings folded tightly against her back. Jack immediately understood. These men were here for her. He did not know why, but his instincts told him she was afraid of them. Without thinking, he moved closer, placing himself between Lyra and the approaching guards. Ethan, confused but loyal, stayed by Lyra's side. One of the guards pointed. "There she is. The girl." Jack's jaw tightened. He spread his arms slightly, shielding both children. "Hold on," he said firmly. "She's with me." The guards slowed, clearly surprised that a human janitor was standing in their way. "Step aside," one ordered. "This is not your concern." Jack shook his head. "She's scared. You don't just grab a child like that." "Not while I'm here." Lyra looked up at him, her golden eyes wide with shock. No one outside her family had ever dared to stand against armed guards for her. She clutched Ethan's hand, her heart racing. From above, Serafina's breath caught. She had remained hidden until now, but seeing Jack shield her daughter made her chest ache. His protective stance reminded her of something she had forgotten long ago, the feeling of being safe. Not because of power, but because someone cared. The guards took another step forward, their hands on their weapons. Jack did not flinch. His voice remained steady. "If you want to take her, you'll have to go through me." His words were quiet, but the strength in them was unmistakable. The moment froze. Then, like a storm breaking, the air shimmered with light. The crowd gasped as a figure descended into the hall. Cloaked in regal armor, wings stretching wide, eyes glowing like molten gold, the Dragon Queen herself appeared. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Every traveler dropped to their knees. The guards bowed low, their foreheads nearly touching the floor. Silence spread across the vast terminal, but Jack did not bow. He stood where he was, shielding Lyra with his body. Ethan pressed close at his side. He had no idea who this woman was, but he could see the fear and respect in everyone else's eyes. Still, he refused to move. Serafina's gaze locked on Jack. She saw the determination in his face, the protective strength in his stance. For a long moment, the two of them simply stared at each other. Around them, no one dared breathe. Finally, Serafina spoke, her voice echoing like thunder, yet carrying a softness beneath it. "Why do you protect her?" Jack swallowed, his heart pounding, but he answered without hesitation. Because she was crying. Because she's just a child. No one should feel alone. The Queen's golden eyes softened. She saw no greed in him, no fear, no desire for reward, only truth. Lyra pressed against Jack's arm, whispering, "Mother." The words spread through the crowd like fire. Gasps echoed. The girl he had shielded was not just any child. She was the daughter of the Dragon Queen. Ethan blinked in awe, looking from Lyra to the towering figure of Serafina. Jack felt shock ripple through him, but he did not step back. His instinct to protect Lyra was stronger than his fear. Serafina's attendants appeared, urging her to punish the human for daring to touch royal blood. But Serafina silenced them with a single glance. Her eyes never left Jack. She asked again, softer this time, "You would risk yourself for someone you do not know?" Jack nodded firmly. "Yes, because it's the right thing to do." The Queen's chest tightened. Those simple words carried more weight than all the speeches she had heard in her throne room. She felt something shift inside her, something she had long buried. She had ruled with strength, with fear, with unbreakable power, but this man had reminded her of something far greater. Compassion. Lyra clung to Jack's sleeve, unwilling to let go. Ethan looked at his father with pride, his small hand gripping Jack's. The moment was pure, unshaken by fear or politics. Serafina straightened, her presence filling the hall. Then, to everyone's shock, she spoke not with anger, but with gratitude. "You have my thanks, human." Her voice rang clear, leaving the guards stunned. She gestured to her daughter. "Come, Lyra." But Lyra shook her head, her golden eyes wet with tears. "I don't want to leave them." The words pierced Serafina's heart. For a moment, the Queen faltered. She had not expected her daughter to resist, especially in front of so many witnesses, yet she could not ignore the truth in her child's voice. Jack bent down, speaking softly to Lyra. "It's all right. She's your mother. You should go to her." His voice was steady, though his heart ached at the thought of letting her go. Lyra hesitated, then slowly stepped toward Serafina. The Queen wrapped her arm around her daughter, her armor gleaming in the light. Still, Serafina's eyes lingered on Jack. For the first time in her reign, she felt uncertain. This human had stood against her guards not out of defiance, but out of love. She saw in him something she had not seen in centuries, a strength that came from the heart. The crowd slowly rose as Serafina and Lyra turned to leave, the Queen's wings casting long shadows across the floor. But as she walked, she glanced back one last time at Jack and Ethan. Their figures stayed etched in her mind. The janitor and his son, standing strong together in the face of power. That night, in her palace, Serafina sat silently, Lyra asleep beside her. She could not forget the human's words. She could not forget his eyes. And for the first time in centuries, the Dragon Queen wondered if perhaps there was more to humanity than she had ever believed. Days passed after the moment in the transit hub when Jack Miller had stood in front of the Dragon Queen's guards. Life for him returned to what seemed like normal, but something had changed. He noticed it in the way Ethan talked more about Lyra, in the way his own thoughts returned again and again to her golden eyes and shy smile. He thought about the Queen too, her powerful presence and the strange softness in her voice when she had spoken to him. Jack tried to push those thoughts away. He was just a janitor, a man who swept floors and lived simply. He told himself he should not expect to see them again. Yet part of him hoped he would. One evening, after finishing his shift, Jack walked with Ethan through the quiet streets toward their small apartment. The city lights glowed above them, and Ethan chattered happily about school and about the games he wanted to play. Suddenly, a shadow moved above them. Jack stopped, sensing something unusual. A sleek craft descended silently, its surface shining like polished silver. From the craft stepped Serafina herself, cloaked in simple robes rather than her armor. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the night. Jack froze, unsure how to react. Ethan grabbed his father's hand, his eyes wide. Serafina looked at them calmly, then spoke in a voice softer than before. "Do not be afraid. I did not come to harm you." She lowered her hood, revealing her face. "I came to thank you." Jack swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything special," he said quietly. "I just helped a child." Serafina studied him closely. "And yet that is what makes it special. So many would have turned away." Her gaze softened as she looked at Ethan. "Your son is like you." He gave Lyra laughter she had not known in years. Ethan smiled shyly. "She's our friend," he said simply. The Queen's heart stirred at those words. She motioned for them to follow her. "Come with me. There is something I want to show you." Jack hesitated, uncertain, but Ethan tugged at his sleeve, excitement shining in his eyes. With a sigh, Jack agreed. The three of them boarded the sleek craft. It lifted smoothly into the night sky, leaving the city below. Jack looked out the window, his breath catching as they passed through the clouds and into the vastness of space. Before long, the craft approached a colossal structure orbiting high above, a palace of silver and crystal, glowing against the stars. Ethan gasped in awe, and even Jack could not hide his amazement. Inside the palace, everything shimmered with beauty and power. Tall pillars lined the great halls, and glowing lights floated like stars within the chambers. Servants bowed low as Serafina led Jack and Ethan deeper inside. At last, they reached a vast room filled with golden banners and carved stone. Sitting at the center was Lyra, who ran forward the moment she saw them. "Jack!" "Ethan!" she cried, her wings fluttering with joy. Ethan ran to meet her, and the two children embraced happily. Jack watched with relief, smiling as he saw Lyra's face brighten. Serafina stood nearby, watching the reunion with a calm expression, though inside her heart swelled with warmth. Jack finally turned to her. "Why did you bring us here?" he asked cautiously. Serafina looked at him with steady eyes. "Because I want you to understand what you have done. You did not just give my daughter food or comfort. You gave her hope. You reminded her what it means to be seen as more than a princess, more than a symbol. You reminded me as well." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't mean to do anything grand, I couldn't ignore her." "That is what makes you different," Serafina replied. "Powerful men speak of honor, yet they would not share their last meal with a stranger." "You would." She paused, her voice softening. "For centuries, my kingdom has been built on fear and strength. But perhaps true strength is something else. Perhaps it is what I saw in you." Jack lowered his gaze, unsure what to say. He felt the weight of her words, but he did not think of himself as strong. He only thought of himself as a father. As days turned to weeks, Jack and Ethan were welcomed in the palace as guests. They did not live in luxury, but they were treated with respect. Lyra spent nearly all her time with Ethan, laughing and playing as children should. Jack found himself often in Serafina's company, speaking with her in quiet chambers or walking through the gardens of crystal trees. She listened to his simple stories about raising Ethan, about working long hours, about living without riches but finding joy in small moments. She had never known such a life, and yet she found herself longing to understand it more. Her advisors grumbled, warning her that humans were weak, that showing them favor would make her vulnerable. But Serafina silenced them each time. She had seen the truth with her own eyes. This janitor had done what her entire council had failed to do, bring joy back to her daughter's life. One evening, as the stars glittered beyond the palace windows, Serafina asked Jack a question that had been growing in her mind. "Why do you care so much for others, even when you gain nothing from it?" Jack thought for a long moment before answering. "Because I know what it feels like to lose. I lost my wife. I know what it feels like to be empty inside. And I don't want anyone else, not even a stranger, to feel that way if I can help it." Serafina's eyes softened, and she felt her throat tighten. His words reached deep into her heart. She had lost much too, though she rarely admitted it. She had buried her pain under layers of duty and pride. Yet here was a human man who carried his loss not with bitterness, but with kindness. Lyra's laughter echoed through the halls as she played with Ethan. The sound brought tears to Serafina's eyes. She turned to Jack. "You have changed us. You may not see it, but you have." Jack shook his head. "I didn't change anything. I just did what anyone should do." But Serafina knew the truth. His small act had changed the course of her heart, and through her it could change the course of kingdoms. In time, word spread through the palace and beyond that. The queen had welcomed a human janitor and his son into her halls. At first the nobles sneered, but when they saw the joy on Lyra's face and the quiet strength in Serafina's eyes, they began to question their own pride. Whispers of change grew in the kingdom. Perhaps kindness had a place beside power. For Jack, life remained simple. He still thought of himself as just a father trying to raise his boy. Yet when he looked at Ethan and Lyra laughing together, when he looked at Serafina watching them with tears shining in her golden eyes, he realized something. Sometimes the smallest actions could ripple through the stars. And so it was that a man who had once lived unseen became the center of a story that spanned worlds, not because he sought glory, but because he gave his sandwich to a crying girl. That single moment of kindness lit a spark in a queen's heart, a spark that would burn long after, shaping a future where humanity and dragons walked together not as enemies, but as allies. Jack never asked for recognition. He never asked for reward. He only held his son's hand, smiled at Lyra, and offered kindness wherever he could. Yet because of that, he became more than a janitor. He became a symbol of hope. And in the quiet nights when Serafina stood on her balcony, watching the stars with Lyra by her side, she often thought of the man who had reminded her of the simplest truth. That real strength was not found in crowns or armies. Real strength was found in compassion, in the courage to care, and in the heart of a human who gave everything even when he had little. It was that truth that made the Dragon Queen's eyes glisten with tears of gratitude, unseen by all but the stars.